Verify This. Building trust in a world of data breaches and digital threats, one episode at a time.
About the tricks used to fool us online. You know, the classic phishing scams, the emotional manipulation stuff.
Yeah, the standard playbook.
But looking at the information you shared, it really feels like we've entered a whole new level now.
Definitely.
It's not just about what you read or feel anymore. It's actually about what you hear and see, your own senses basically being turned against you.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the rise of these really sophisticated deepfakes, we're talking AI-generated audio and video that can convincingly impersonate real people well, it marks a significant and frankly quite unsettling shift.
It really does.
What began as maybe a bit of a novelty, those slightly amusing celebrity voiceovers online, it's rapidly evolved into a serious threat, especially in cybersecurity.
It's genuinely disturbing when you think about the possibilities, isn't it?
It is.
Like, imagine getting a call. It sounds exactly like your CEO, or maybe a family member sounding really distressed.
Right, that panic in their voice.
Exactly. Urgently asking for an immediate wire transfer. The voice, the tone, the sheer panic, it all sounds completely real.
But it's not.
What if it's entirely faked by AI?
And look, these aren't just abstract, sci-fi movie scenarios anymore.
No, that's what's scary.
As we see in the sources, we're already seeing documented cases. AI being used to generate exactly these kinds of fake emergency calls, or cloning executive voices for fraud, financial gain.
So this isn't a future problem?
No, absolutely not. It's actively happening now. And as the tech gets better, more refined, it's only going to become more widespread and harder to spot.
Which really forces the question, doesn't it? In this kind of new reality, what can we actually rely on when it comes to proving who someone is?
That's the core issue.
If a voice, or maybe even a face down the line, can be faked so easily, how do we confidently verify identities? Especially for critical things like accessing secure data or, moving money.
Exactly. And the traditional methods, the things we've relied on for so long, they're increasingly proving to be, just not good enough.
Like passwords.
Passwords, yeah. We know they're routinely compromised in data breaches. It happens constantly.
Yeah.
PINs can be guessed or phished through social engineering.
Right.
And even relying on something that feels so personal, like your voice for a command, that becomes a huge vulnerability when synthetic voices can perfectly mimic you.
So those old methods are just becoming porous, really?
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Especially against these advanced AI-driven attacks.
Okay, but digging into the material you sent over, I did find something, a compelling potential answer. Voice biometrics. Specifically, this technology from a company called V2Verify.
Yes.
What really struck me is their approach. It isn't focused on what you're saying, but fundamentally on how you're saying it. Okay, so just for our listener, voice biometrics basically uses the unique characteristics of your voice to confirm it's really you, kind of like a fingerprint.
Right, that's a good analogy, yeah.
So how does that focus on the how makes such a critical difference here?
Well, what's particularly insightful about V2Verify's approach is really the depth of analysis involved.
Okay.
So while the current deepfake generators can get remarkably close on the surface, replicating the sound, the intonation, the rhythm of speech.
Oh, making it sound like the person.
Exactly. They still really struggle to reproduce the very fine, almost imperceptible underlying characteristics, the things that make each human voice truly unique.
You mean those micro characteristics? I think the sources mentioned things like tiny tensions in vocal muscles, subtle breath patterns.
Precisely. Breath flow, the unique resonance of your individual vocal tract, even your subconscious speech rhythm. It's like a deeply ingrained vocal signature, as you said.
A signature. Okay.
And V2Verify's system analyzes, get this, well over 100 of these unique vocal characteristics.
Wow, over 100.
Yeah. So think of it as going way beyond just recognizing the words or the general sound. It's delving into the inherent biological traits, how you physically produce sound.
Things you don't even think about.
Exactly. Like subtle variations in the shape of your vocal tract, which you're not consciously aware of. They leave a unique acoustic imprint. Or almost imperceptible fluctuations in air pressure as you speak. These are the kinds of nuances that current AI just struggles to replicate convincingly.
So, okay, even if a deepfake sounds incredibly similar, like really close to someone I know, those underlying sort of deeply rooted biometric markers will be fundamentally different. That's the real strength here, isn't it?
That's exactly it. The system isn't just, let's say, hearing a voice. It's truly knowing a voice based on these intrinsic biological elements,
Okay.
which makes it exceptionally challenging for a synthetic voice, no matter how sophisticated it sounds, to actually pass the authentication check.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental difference in the mechanics of verification.
This really highlights why the old ways are struggling, doesn't it? One of the sources you sent detailed this, just relentless pattern of security breaches. It even cited a huge compromise at a Fortune 500 company. And it started with just leaked credentials, basic usernames, and passwords.
Right.
It feels like these big incidents are becoming almost normal.
They have, unfortunately, become disturbingly regular.
Yeah.
And what's particularly concerning, as your sources probably pointed out, is that many of these breaches, even the really big ones, often stem from surprisingly basic weaknesses in that initial authentication step.
The front door, basically.
Exactly. It just underscores that even with multiple layers of security, a weak entry point at that first login can potentially compromise the whole system.
And it's not just passwords anymore, is it? I mean, multi-factor authentication, MFA, that was supposed to be a big step up.
It was, and it helps. But
And now even that's being bypassed more often through things like clever phishing kits or SIM swapping.
they are constantly adapting, and they're doing it with increasing efficiency and scale.
Right.
The sources likely highlighted how attackers are using automation, more and more scripts, just constantly scanning, testing stolen or leaked credentials across tons of websites.
And people reusing passwords makes it worse.
Oh, absolutely. Reusing passwords across different accounts just amplifies the damage these automated attacks can do. It really is an ongoing technological arms race.
Which brings us right back to why this unique take on voice biometrics like V2 Verify's tech seems so promising. If the authentication is tied so tightly to those inherent vocal characteristics, well, then it almost doesn't matter if a bad actor gets someone's password. Or even invents an MFA code.
Exactly. They simply cannot replicate the underlying biometric signature of the legitimate user's voice.
They don't sound like them biologically.
Precisely. That's the core advantage. As one of your sources probably stressed, with this kind of robust voice biometric authentication, an unauthorized person just cannot get into secure systems or start fraudulent transfers or access protected data without authenticating their actual physical voice.
So even if they trick you with a super convincing deepfake recording, that sounds identical.
The underlying biometric check will fail. It won't match the enrolled template.
And this isn't just theory, is it? The info you shared suggests V2 Verify's platform is already being used out there in really high-stakes sectors.
That's right. Defense, banking, healthcare,
Right.
places where security is absolutely critical.
That real-world use, especially in those areas, really says a lot about its robustness, doesn't it?
It does indeed. I mean, these are highly regulated, intensely scrutinized sectors. The potential cost of a breach, financial, reputational, is massive.
Yeah.
So the fact that this technology is being implemented and, importantly, trusted in these critical areas really underscores its effectiveness against real-world threats.
This really drives home the bigger picture, doesn't it? The traditional security tools we've relied on just aren't cutting it anymore against these rapidly evolving, sophisticated attacks.
They're struggling.
It feels like it's not just about patching holes anymore. We need maybe a more fundamental shift in how we even think about authentication.
I think that's right. If you connect this to the overall security posture, authentication really is the foundation. It's the anchor, the main control point. By implementing something like robust voice biometric authentication, you're essentially locking down that initial access point in a way that traditional threats, phishing, malware, and now these sophisticated AI attacks simply can't get around.
Yeah.
Because they can't fake who the user actually is biologically.
And the urgency here feels pretty high. As we've discussed, these data breaches aren't just more frequent, they seem more damaging too.
The impact is growing.
It really feels like our overall security is only as strong as that first login point. If that's weak, the whole thing's vulnerable.
That's a critical point. In cybersecurity, you always hear that phrase, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
Yeah.
And increasingly, that weakest link is proving to be traditional authentication. So implementing stronger measures isn't just, a nice to have anymore. It's rapidly becoming essential in this threat landscape.
Okay, so if we boil down the key info from the sources, the main takeaway seems to be, yes, deepfakes and AI fraud are a serious growing threat, a significant one.
No question.
But we're not defenseless. Innovative tech, like V2 Verify's voice biometrics, offers a really powerful countermeasure because it focuses on those unique, inherent biological traits of a voice.
Right. The stuff current AI just can't convincingly fake.
Yeah.
Yet. Anyway.
So that's a clear and accurate summary then.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
And the right response to this challenge isn't just, being scared of what AI can do in fraud.
Right.
It's about actively exploring and adopting more sophisticated, more robust security tech. Stuff that can evolve alongside the attacker's methods. We need to meet their sophistication with our own.
It really makes you think, though, as AI keeps advancing, and it's advancing so fast, often in unpredictable ways, what other fundamental parts of our digital lives will need this kind of basic rethink? How we establish trust, how we verify identity. It feels like we're maybe just scratching the surface of the bigger implications, living in a world where those traditional signals of trust, a voice, maybe soon a face on video, can be faked so easily.
That's a really interesting point to ponder. What does trust even look like in that future?
Definitely something for all of us to keep thinking about.
So hopefully this deep dive has given everyone listening a little bit more insight into this whole world of digital trust, and maybe even inspired you to take some steps to boost your own online security. Because ultimately, it's about asking yourself, how much do you trust the digital world? And what are you doing to protect yourself within it?
That's a great question to leave everyone with.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, everybody. We'll see you next time.